Hello, everyone. My name is Pastor Rosie Rivera. I'm the Associate Pastor at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Pflugerville, Texas. So glad you can join us today. I will be conducting over the next 6 weeks during Lent a daily devotional. We'll be trying to post them every day. They'll be available Monday through Saturday. Sunday, we'll take a day off since I'll be here at church and you'll hear the word that way during the season of Lent. And so I invite you all to prayerfully consider, what the study means to you. And what we're going to be looking at this year is the entire book of Colossians. The book of Colossians contains 4 chapters. So over the next 6 weeks, we'll be focusing on each of the verses throughout those 4 chapters. And how this will work is I will post a daily video here for you to view and to see, and then along with that will be posted on the website the scripture verses that I'll be reading, along with kind of the key points of what I'll be highlighting in the text for the day. So you'll be able to view that, listen to that, and watch that every single day during Lent. So, and I hope that you find this meaningful. I hope you take some notes. I encourage you to prayerfully consider a prayer journal during the season of Lent. Sometimes writing your thoughts about how a scripture verse really touches you or how it moves you, you may find helpful. So at least that's how scripture works with me. When I read something, sometimes it really moves me, and it's important to write those things down so that you can reflect on them later. So I thought I would start today with, as I begin the recordings, and I'm sorry about the ghetto setup behind me, but it was the only way to get the glare off the screen. And I know it's a little bit dark on this side, but hopefully we'll have that fixed in the next couple of days. I've got to get some more light bulbs here in my office, so sorry about the lighting. But anyway, this is the best I can do for now. So let's talk about the book of Colossians. So first of all, the book of Colossians is often called a prison epistle. And what that means is that when Paul wrote it, he wrote it from prison. Now, some people believe that Paul didn't write the book of Colossians. Some theologians go back and forth about that, largely because of how it's written. It doesn't kind of follow the key elements of that signify his writings as he did in Romans and in Acts and several others of the epistles. In this particular epistle, he actually points out several people, which is a little bit uncharacteristic of Paul. So while he does point out people in his writings, the number of people he points out in this one is what some theologians find problematic. So the biggest issue that was going on in Colosseum, as you know, each of the epistles kind of are named for a particular place where Paul would eventually do ministry. Truth be told, Paul never actually went to Colosseum. He only heard what was going on there, and from prison wrote letters to many people that would distribute the letters and read them to the people of Colosseum. So thus we get the name Colossians. Those are the people that lived in Colosseum. So here was the big issue that was happening in Colosseum. Colosseum was an area that was riddled with heresy. There was a lot of Greek philosophy going on. There was a lot of spiritual pursuits that were not Christian, and it became problematic for people who were trying to push the Christian agenda as the disciples were. And so there was a lot of heresy that was happening. There was a lot of mix of Greek philosophy with Christian theology together, and people were just plain confused. And so Paul thought, well, maybe this is a good place to start, by trying to spread the gospel and writing his letters, and that's what he did. So the first 2 chapters focus on something, and then the second 2 chapters focus on something. There are only 4 chapters, of course, in the book of Colossians. It's a very small book in comparison to some of other writings by Paul. So Paul first, in chapters 1 and 2, sends words of thanks to the faithful believers. He really kind of pushes the agenda to thank and praise those who were following Christ already, and wants to make sure that they are being edified and affirmed in their faith. And so he spends much of the first 2 chapters talking about who God is in flesh. And he talks a lot about, he also warns people about how to stay on the path of Christianity. He talks about not being led away by trickery and not following the traditions of man. So he knew what was going on and was trying to sway the people in his teachings the other way. So in the second and the third and fourth chapters, we hear a very large focus on God, and he encourages the church to focus on God and keeping your eye on the goal. So he lays out what those goals should be and then how to follow that. And so particularly in chapter 3, he really talks about how to manage family matters, how to get along with others, and his approach for believers on how to put aside petty situations and to really stay focused on what the mission of the church should be. So, and then, just so you know, I'm using 2 resources to kind of give you this information for today. One is from the website BibleHub.com. They offer sometimes a commentary or summary of each of the Bible's books of the Bible, and that's where I got one of the sources. And the other was a resource that I had from seminary, which is entitled Introducing the New Testament. This is by Mark Allen Powell, and he's a really good writer. And he points out a lot of what I just shared about those themes in the chapters, but he also points out 3 other major themes that I think are important to mention here. So he says that there are 3 main ones, and the first one is this. The first one is that the book of Colossians mentions and names the cosmic Christ. So in other words, Paul mentions that Christ is not just present in our world, but will be present in the future, and will be, he talks about Christ being ruler of the universe. And so you'll see that language in his writing as we move forward. The second theme that I kind of just alluded to in my first was he talks a lot about the realized I can't even say the word. Eschatological. There we go. Eschatology. The realized eschatology. That's the word I was trying to say. So when you talk about eschatology, that is in reference to what is to come, the future. So a eschatological theology is the study of what will happen at the end of time. So he says that in some of his writings that Paul has a strong belief of what will happen at the end time, and that is mentioned in the book of Colossians. So that part will be interesting for us to discuss. And then the third thing that he talks about, which my personal favorite about the book of Colossians, is this. It's very clear that Paul wants, that he knows that the people of Colossians are knowledgeable, but he wants them to have a deeper spiritual maturity. And so he really lays out, what does it mean to grow and live as a Christian, and how do you use that in your daily life? So he not only talks about kind of what's just on the surface of our faith, but how to go a little bit deeper and really solidifying your spirituality with God. And so that's my personal part of the book of Colossians. So those are the kind of the 3 themes that Mark Powell points out in his writings. And just so you know, most of the recordings every day I will try to keep under 5 to 7 minutes, so you'll have time to watch them in the morning or in the evening before you go to bed. And again, as I mentioned to you, I encourage you all to keep a prayer journal as you go through this. I think you'll find that helpful. And hopefully we'll be able to post a couple of days in advance, so that if you know you're not going to be available the next day, you can listen to an extra recording. So I hope you find these helpful for you and developing your own personal spiritual life, and I hope you find it meaningful. And if I can answer any questions in any way, please feel free to email me at pastorrosie@ilcpville.org, and I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks for joining us today, and I guess I will see you soon or on Ash Wednesday. Have a blessed day.